The first time Chibik Nosu stepped onto the tarmac at Matola Muhammad International Airport, he didn't look back. He couldn't afford to. There was no room for doubt, not when his entire village had gathered 2 nights before to pray for him and send him off with blessings and expectations heavy enough to crush his spirit. He clutched a small leather bag, worn and scuffed, and inside it were only a few clothes, a Bible from his mother, and 7,500 naira, money scraped together by neighbors and well-wishers, each one hoping he'd return one day with stories of gold and houses with air conditioners. His mother, Mama Ijeoma, had said, cupping his face with her wrinkled hands, "Never forget your home. Whatever you do, remember that Ola Igbo is your root." He had nodded then, swallowing the lump in his throat. He couldn't let her see him cry. She had given too much already. She had sold her last remaining pieces of her husband's land to help pay for his papers. And then there was Obina, his younger brother. Chibik had left the farm and the family in his care, trusting him with every kobo that he would send. "Look after Mama," he had said, pulling him into a hug. "When the money comes, use it well. Let our name mean something again." "I dey your back, bike," Obina had said. "Anything you send, I go use and build something for this family." At 29, Chibik had dreams stitched into the lining of his coat. He was going to South Africa, land of opportunity, the land where Igbo men like him built empires from nothing. He had heard the stories about Namdi from ABA who now drove a Benz in Cape Town, about the Ease brothers who shipped electronics back to Onitsha every month. Chibik was not going to hustle forever. He had a plan: work, save, send money home, build a house, and return a king. Years passed, and Nsaka changed. Small houses became duplexes. The once muddy Nojobi street was now tarred, lined with electric poles and shops selling everything from imported spaghetti to flat-screen TVs. At the center of this transformation was Obina Nwosu. People called him Obi Millionaire. He wore creased senator outfits and smoked cigars like a man with a legacy. He had joined the town union, donated during church harvest, and was rumored to have connections with politicians from Enugu to Abuja. To the community, he was the ideal son. "See how he built that big house for his mother," they would whisper. "And his brother? Still in South Africa, I think." But it's Obina who stayed to develop the family land. What they didn't know was that nearly every foundation, every block, every iron rod in that house was paid for by Chibik's sweat and blood. Month after month, the alerts came in from abroad. "Obina," Chibik would say over WhatsApp voice calls, "did you finish the borehole? What about the roofing? No worry, brother. Everything they go well. Not just 1 or 2 things remain." Chibik believed him. He always had. Meanwhile, Obina started speaking in coded Igbo English slang, using words like investment returns and cash flow whenever he was asked about the money. He never mentioned that most of it had been used to impress girls, buy a Toyota Camry 2.4, or open a beer parlor he never managed properly. Mama Ijeoma was just happy she had food and medicine. She didn't ask questions. Obina always came through when she needed something, and that was enough for her. But in the dark corners of his heart, Obina lived with a quiet fear. What if Chibik returns one day? What will I say? But he always dismissed it. He's doing well over there. He won't come back anytime soon. He was wrong. The sun burned hot over Nsaka the day Chibik Nwosu returned, not in triumph, but in silence. No brass band, no welcome home banners, no crowd gathered at Peace Mass Transit Park to cheer his name. Only the dust from passing Kiki Nepep wheels and the crackle of okpa sellers calling out for buyers. He clutched his black duffel bag, the same one he had carried when he left Nigeria 12 years earlier. Except now it was heavier, not with money or gifts, but with shame, loss, and questions too painful to answer. He had been deported 3 weeks ago. Caught in a police sweep in Durban, his forged documents had finally failed him. Everything was seized, his savings, his tools, even his rented apartment. South Africa is not your home, the officer had said coldly as he was processed for deportation. And maybe that was true. But Nigeria didn't feel like home either, not anymore. He boarded an Okada and gave the rider directions. Mojiobi Street. The big blue gate beside the Anglican church. Oh, that one way Obi Millionaire Day live, the rider said, glancing back. Chibik hesitated. Yes, he said quietly. That's my family house. The rider didn't notice the shift in his tone. He sped off down the dusty roads, past rows of new houses and shops that didn't exist when Chibik left. When they pulled up in front of the gate, Chibik's heart pounded. The house looked even bigger in person. Tall fence. Polished paint. Satellite dish on the roof. And a paved compound. He took a deep breath and knocked. There was a delay. Then the sound of footsteps. The gate creaked open. Obina stood in the doorway, stunned. Chibik. Yes, brother. I'm home. You didn't say you were coming. I wanted to surprise you. Obina's eyes darted to the duffel bag. The dust on Chibik's shoes. The hollowness in his brother's eyes. This wasn't the triumphant return he had feared. This was worse. Oh, no, Walla. Come in, come in. You must be tired from the journey. Chibik stepped into the compound. His eyes scanned the house, trying to match it with the floor plans he had sent Obina years ago. The veranda looked familiar. The iron bars on the window, just as he imagined. But something felt off. There was no warmth. No excitement. Only silence and thin tension hanging in the air. Inside, Mama Ijeoma sat in the parlor on her cushioned chair, wrapped in a faded Ankara wrapper. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw him. Chibik, she whispered. Mama. He dropped his bag and knelt, holding her frail hands. Her eyes filled with tears. They said you might never come back. I told you I would. I just didn't know it would be like this. Obina stood by the doorway, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. That night, they ate in silence. Rice and stew. No meat in Chibik's plate. Just one for Mama. One for Obina. No one asked him how he'd been. No one asked what had happened. But Chibik knew. The questions would come in the morning. By sunrise, the village was already alive. Roosters crowed. Radios blared morning devotion. The smell of burning firewood drifted through the air. But inside the Nwosu house on Nojobi Street, the silence was loud. Chibik sat outside on the veranda, sipping gari with groundnuts. The same spot he used to sit as a child, dreaming of what the future might look like. Only now, the future sat behind him in silence, in the form of a house he paid for, but didn't feel welcoming. Obina joined him, wearing a neatly ironed native outfit and slippers that looked more expensive than the house itself. So, brother, what really happened? He asked casually, picking up his own cup of tea. Chibik exhaled. I was arrested in South Africa, immigration sweep. Someone tipped them off. I was using borrowed papers, and it caught up with me. I was deported with nothing. Obina's face barely moved. Oh. Ndu. Sorry. Silence. But I'm here now, Chibik continued. And I want to start again. I was thinking maybe I can stay here for now. Get myself together. Work with you in the block business, maybe. Obina looked down at his cup, then up at his brother. Work with me? Yes. I helped set it up, didn't I? Obina chuckled. That was years ago, Bike. Things have changed. Business is different now. And this house. He paused, choosing his words carefully. This house, it's not really yours. Chibik froze. What are you saying? You sent money, yes. But you never told me to put your name on the land documents. Everything here, house, land, even the fence, is under my name. Because I trusted you, Obina. I sent the money so you could build it in my name. Obina shrugged. But you didn't. No proof. No paper. No witness. Just voice notes on WhatsApp. That's not legal, brother. Chibik's mouth went dry. So what now? You want to throw me out of the house I built? Obina stood up. I'm saying you can't stay here permanently. A few days, maybe a week. But you can't claim the house. Not anymore. Chibik felt like the air had been knocked from his chest. His fist clenched around the plastic cup in his hand, crushing it. Mama knows the truth, he said quietly. She knows I built this house. Obina laughed bitterly. Go and ask her, then. Let's see what she'll say. Chibik did. Later that evening, he approached Mama Ijeoma, who sat in her room fanning herself slowly. Mama, he said softly. Tell me the truth. Didn't I send the money for this house? Didn't I ask Obina to build it in my name? She looked at him for a long time. Her lips trembled. You did, but Obina has been the one taking care of me here. When you were away, he was here. He made sure I had food. Medicine. He was present. But the money, Mama. I sent it. I worked every day to build this. She sighed. My son, I am old. I need peace. I cannot take sides in this. You are both my children. But I have nothing left. Chibik said, voice rising. South Africa took everything. Now my own brother wants to take this too. Then maybe you should go to your wife, she said, looking away. Perhaps she can help you. Chibik blinked, stunned. So you want me to leave? No answer. Just the slow, painful sound of the fan flapping in the hot air. Chibik walked out, his throat burning, heart sinking. He had never felt more betrayed in his life. The walk to Adora's house was deliberate. Chibik Nwosu kept his face low, allowing the dust to cling to his trousers, his shoes scuffed just enough to look like they journeyed through disappointment. He had made sure his beard was overgrown, his eyes sunken with the help of a little makeup and fatigue. Everything about him was meant to scream broken man. Because this time, he wasn't returning as a deportee. He was returning as a husband, a brother, a son, testing their hearts. When he arrived in Saka 2 weeks ago, he hadn't gone straight home. Instead, he stayed in a hotel on the outskirts of town under a different name. He hired a discreet PI from Enugu to trace how the money he'd been sending was spent, how much went into the house, the business, and into his mother's upkeep. What he found had shocked him. Obina, the brother he trusted like a twin, had been claiming all credit for the house. He lived lavishly, hosted parties, and told the community that he alone funded their family's success. Edahora, the wife he thought would be waiting with open arms, had rebranded the business as solely hers and hadn't mentioned his name in months. And so, Chibik crafted a lie, a deportation story. A fall from grace. A total loss. Let me see what they would do when I have nothing, he had told himself. And so far, the answers were clear. He stood at her door, dust-covered, duffel bag in hand. She looked him up and down, arms folded. You? Back like this? I was deported, he lied calmly. I lost everything. But I want to start again, with you. She didn't even hide her disgust. You should have planned better. What am I supposed to do with you now? Chibik waited. Maybe she'd soften. Maybe she'd remember who he was to her. But instead, she sighed and waved him off. I can't accommodate failure. I have built my own life. Don't come here empty-handed expecting a welcome. She shut the door before he could reply. Chibik stood still for a moment, breathing in deeply. Another heart revealed, he thought. He walked back through Nsukka's dusty streets, not with shame, but with clarity. The people he had trusted the most had shown him their true faces. That night, he returned to the uncompleted building near Hilltop Primary, lying flat on a sack mat, smiling to himself under the stars. Tomorrow, I meet the one person I hope will pass the test. Uche. The next morning, Chibik washed his face with sachet water under a mango tree near the abandoned house. He wore the same dusty clothes. Everything about him screamed defeat, but his heart, strangely, was light. He had found what he came looking for, truth. Now, there was one final stop. The only friend who might still remember him not just as that guy who went abroad, but as a brother in spirit. His name was Uche Izenwa. They hadn't spoken in years, not since secondary school, when life dragged Uche through hardship and Chibik once stepped in to pay his younger sister's WAC fees. He said thank you like he owed me his soul, Chibik remembered. Now, let's see if he remembers that so deep gratitude. The place hadn't changed much. A small two-room structure with a zinc roof that looked like it had survived 10 rainy seasons. Firewood smoke drifted from the backyard, and the sound of a pounding mortar thumped rhythmically. Chibik walked slowly toward the compound gate, heart pounding, not from fear, but from hope. Uche, he called out, almost hesitantly. Uche, is that you? A few seconds passed. Then the door creaked open. Uche stood there, wearing a faded Chelsea jersey, a hoe resting on his shoulder. He squinted, confused. Then, his eyes widened. Chibik. Chibik Nosu. Yes, brother, Chibik smiled, forcing a tired voice. It's me. Uche dropped the hoe instantly and rushed forward. Jesus. Is this really you? Where have you been? Look at you. They embraced, a clap on the back kind of hug that only old friends understood. What happened to you? Uche asked, as already scanning the dust and weariness. Chibik lowered his gaze. Things fell apart, Uche. Deportation. No money. No family. Just me. And a bag. Uche blinked. Then he said the words Chibik never heard from his own brother or wife. Come inside, my brother. This house isn't much, but there's room for you. Inside, Ngozi, Uche's wife, paused when she saw Chibik. Her brows rose slightly, then softened. Any friend of my husband is my brother too, she said warmly. You're welcome here. Thank you, Auntie Ngozi, Chibik said quietly. He ate that night under a leaking roof, sitting on a low stool with steaming akpu and bitter leaf soup in front of him. It wasn't much, but it was everything. Uche gave him his old mattress. Ngozi hand-washed his dusty clothes without a word. That night, as rain tapped the roof and thunder hummed in the distance, Chibik couldn't sleep. Not because of mosquitoes. Not because of discomfort. But because, for the first time since returning, he felt human again. Tomorrow, he whispered to himself, I stop pretending. The test is over. And in the soft glow of a dim lantern, he smiled for the first time in weeks. 3 days passed. Chibik stayed quietly in Uche's house, sweeping the compound every morning, helping Ngozi fetch water, and taking long walks to look for work, though, truthfully, he already had plans in motion. Each evening, the three of them sat on wooden stools in the courtyard, sharing boiled yam and pepper sauce, laughing over old school stories. Uche had started calling him Odigu Bike again, the way he used to back in the day. You remember how you used to draw cars on the back of your notebooks? You said you would own 3 cars by 35, Uche laughed. I still can, Chibik replied with a smirk, then quickly hid it behind a sip of water. But inside, Chibik's chest tightened every time Uche looked at him with pity. Every time Ngozi gave him the larger piece of meat. They were giving from their lack, not their abundance. And they did it with love. That night, after dinner, as Ngozi stepped into the room to put the kids to sleep, Chibik looked over at Uche, who was scraping his plate. Brother, Chibik said slowly, can we talk? Uche glanced up, curious. You dey worry me. Talk anything. Chibik sat straighter. I wasn't deported. Uche paused, spoon frozen halfway to his mouth. Wetin you talk? I wasn't deported, Chibik repeated. I came back by choice. I have money. A lot of it. I own 3 plots of land in Enugu. My South Africa business is doing well. I've been staying in a hotel outside town. Uche blinked, confusion morphing into disbelief. Wait, so all this, your clothes, the story, the sleeping in uncompleted building, no lie. Chibik nodded slowly. It was a test. I needed to know who I could truly count on. My brother. He failed. My wife. She failed. But you, Uche, you passed. Silence. Then Uche chuckled. So, not like film? Loyalty test. Chibik grinned. Something like that. Ka. You nearly gave my wife heart attack. She was praying for you day and night. They both laughed, a long, cleansing laugh under the moonlight. I plan to reward you and your family, Chibik said seriously. But not just with money. With partnership. Partnership. I want to start a block molding business here. I'll fund it. You manage it. We'll build together. I want to plant roots here again, with people who are real. Uche leaned back, hands on his head. God. See how test turned to blessing. Bike, you be real man. Ngozi returned just in time to hear the last part. What's happening? She asked, eyes darting between the 2 men. Our brother here is not poor at all, Uche said. No billionaire way they do undercover. Ben. Chibik stood and faced her. Auntie Ngozi, thank you for treating me like a brother even when you thought I had nothing. Now it's my turn to treat you like family. Ngozi covered her mouth with both hands, stunned. God bless you, my brother. You'll never lack. That night, Chibik didn't sleep on a mattress. He slept on gratitude. And for the first time in his adult life, he knew he had found home again. In the weeks following Chibik's reveal, life took on a different rhythm. His partnership with Uche bloomed fast. With capital injected into the new block molding business, they acquired a plot beside the main road, bought brand new molding machines, and hired 6 young boys in the area who had been idling around with nothing to do. Within days, word spread across Nsaka. You never hear say by Knosu Don open block industry. Not him. I thought he was deported oh. That one not real Odigo. He come back silent, but he enter with fire. The whispers reached every street, shop, and salon, including Nojobi Street. And eventually, they reached Obina. He sat in the parlor of the house he called his own, fanning himself as his wife complained about rising prices. But his mind was elsewhere. The rumors had his ears burning. Back is back. Not just back, the man they cash out. Obina scoffed, but fear gnawed at his chest. He hadn't heard from Chibik since the day he kicked him out. No messages. No threats. No drama. That silence scared him more than shouting ever could. But pride wouldn't let him ask questions. Let him flex more. We go see who last, he muttered. Only things weren't going so well in Obina's world. The funds had dried up. His cement supplies were low. The boys who once hailed him Odigu Obi now followed Bike's Kiki delivery van like bees to honey. He took out a loan from a microfinance bank to restock. He dipped into their savings to throw a small birthday party for his wife, hoping to remind everyone he was still the man. But the money that once flowed like palm wine had turned to trickles. Then came the fire. It happened in the middle of a quiet Tuesday. Obina's wife had left a pot of ogbono soup on the gas stove. She was rushing to church for midweek women's prayer meeting. In her haste, she forgot to turn off the burner completely. The gas leaked for 30 minutes before it caught flame. By the time neighbors noticed the thick, black smoke curling from the windows, it was too late. The fire spread fast, devouring curtains, furniture, certificates, electronics. Obina's flashy clothes, the imported rug from Dubai, the photo frames of him standing beside government officials, all gone. The fire truck arrived, but as usual, late. When Obina arrived, barefoot and screaming, he found half the house reduced to charred bones. The roof had caved in. The rooms were ash. And the house he claimed he built was now rubble. They moved into a single-room apartment near the edge of town. No compound. No generator. No respect. People whispered when they passed. Those same mouths that once cheered him on now muttered things like, "You see, that's what happens when you build on another man's sweat. Karma is real, oh." Obina walked with his head low, his once sleek beard now patchy, his phone barely ringing. One evening, as he passed by Hilltop Road, he saw a banner. Nwosu and Sons Block Industry, quality that lasts. There was a picture of Chibik standing beside Uche, both of them in work vests and safety helmets, smiling like men who slept well at night. Obina felt something twist in his chest. He turned his face and walked faster. But the damage had already been done. It was late afternoon when Chibik finally made the walk to what remained of the house on Mojobi Street. He had waited. Not out of anger, but out of purpose. He needed the dust to settle, the whispers to soften. He needed Obina to sit long enough with the consequences of his choices before facing him again. Obina moved back to the abandoned building because he couldn't pay the rent of the house he had rented. Now was the time. He wore a plain white shirt tucked into well-pressed trousers, leather sandals shining, and a calmness that could only come from peace within. As he approached the blackened skeleton of the once proud house, children kicked a football nearby, dust rising with every cheer. Life was moving on, even here. The gate, once locked to him, now hung half-broken. He stepped through. There, sitting on a white plastic chair under the mango tree that had survived the fire, was Obina. He looked thinner. His skin darker, not from sun but from stress. His hands were clasped tightly together, staring at the floor like he was trying to hold the earth still with his thoughts. He didn't look up. "You don't need to pretend not to see me," Chibik said calmly. Obina raised his head slowly. His eyes were hollow. No fire. No swagger. Just shame, and something else, exhaustion. "So," he said, voice rough. "You came to gloat." Chibik shook his head. "If I wanted to gloat, I would have sent people to do it for me. I came to see you face to face. For closure." Obina scoffed. "You planned this, didn't you? You set me up." "No," Chibik replied. "Life set you up. I just stepped back and let truth do what it does best." Obina rubbed his hands over his face, sighing deeply. "I messed up." "Yes," Chibik said honestly. "You did. You took what wasn't yours. You lied to Mama. Lied to everyone. But worse, you broke trust." "I was jealous," Obina murmured, looking up with tears welling. You were always the one people talked about. Even when you left. I thought, maybe I could finally shine on my own. You could have, Chibik said. With your own light. They sat in silence, the wind rustling through the mango leaves above them. Mama asked of you, Chibik added. I've moved her to a proper clinic in Enugu. She's doing better. She still prays for you. Obinna nodded slowly. I don't deserve her. Maybe not, Chibik replied. But you're still her son. Obinna wiped his eyes. So, what now? Chibik stood. Now, I move forward. You can rebuild your life, Obinna. But this time, let it be from truth. Not borrowed glory. He reached into his pocket and dropped a small envelope on the chair beside Obinna. There's 50,000 naira inside. It's not a handout. It's a seed. Plant it well. Obinna looked up, stunned. You're still helping me. After everything. That's what big brothers do, Chibik said, his voice steady. Even when their younger ones forget who they are. He turned and began walking away. Bike, Obinna called out. Chibik stopped but didn't turn. Thank you. A slight smile tugged at the corner of Chibik's mouth. He didn't reply. He didn't need to. Months passed. Nwosu and Sons Block Industry became the most trusted supplier in Nsukka. The name began spreading into 9th Mile, OPI, and even Udi. Chibik and Uche built a strong partnership, honest, balanced, and rooted in shared history. Chibik bought a small bungalow for Mama in GRA Enugu, where she sat on her veranda every evening, praying with her rosary, a quiet smile on her lips. Edeora, upon hearing of her husband's success, tried reaching out. The message was never returned. Obinna, humbled but not broken, used the seed money to start a modest poultry farm. It wasn't flashy, but it was his. He worked with his own hands and began to understand the difference between inheritance and identity. And Chibik Nwosu. He found peace, not in the house he paid for, but in the people who proved their hearts were solid. Because in the end, the true foundation of any home isn't cement or walls. It's character. And character never burns down. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share.